given that it's only, we want to get done on time, and it looks like almost everybody's here. Is Mara, is your whole team here, more to the point?
Yes.
We're all here, yep.
Okay.
Great. So shall we get started, Francis? You think? Okay,
I think so.
great. So good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone here today. I'm Jennifer Bonneberger from the Independence Foundation. And on behalf of Philanthropy Network and my co-chair, Francis Sheehan from the Foundation for Delaware County, I'd like to welcome you to today's meeting of the Delaware County Funders Affinity Group. Some of you may remember that back in September, we gathered around the topic of food insecurity in the region and in the county in particular. And at that meeting, Dr. Monica Taylor from the County Council, who's with us today, so thank you, Dr. Taylor, for being here. She updated us on the council's plans to establish a centralized food bank in the county, and that they were in the process of looking for a provider. And since that time, Share Food program has been identified, and they are here today to update us on the plans for the county and the status of the project. We'll have time at the end of their presentation for a Q&A. So if you have any questions, if you can pop them into the chat, that would be great. But before I hand this meeting over to George Matisic, the Executive Director of Share, and his team, I want to thank them for being here today, particularly as the organization is going through a very difficult time with the recent passing of their former and longtime executive director, Stevana Wynn. Those of us who knew Stevana remember her as a force of nature, and also that you never walked away from an encounter with Stevana without a smile on your face. So I wanted to extend our condolences to the entire team at Share for your loss. Stevana was a great lady. So with that, I would like to turn this over to George.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. And there were a couple conversations I walked away from Stevana without a smile on my face. And for those of you who know her, you know that that's true on occasion. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to have Steve Preston, if you can share your screen. We just put together a quick PowerPoint, so I don't know how we would go about doing that, but we did put a quick PowerPoint together for everybody today.
I'm on it. I just have to give access to Ring Central to use to share my screen, so just give me 1 sec.
While we're doing that, I can do the introduction. That's Steve Preston, our Chief Program Officer. And also with us today is Marion Atkins, who is our Director of Development. Right.
Is this working?
Working.
Mm-hmm.
Working for me. Everybody.
Beautiful.
Okay, great. Now it's not. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Does everybody still have it? I had it for a second.
No.
Now we lost it, Steve.
And we'll make sure to send this to everybody afterwards, so
Okay.
no need to take copious notes.
All right. I'll give it another second for Stephen. If not, we can just jump into it, and the PowerPoint's not totally necessary for all of this. Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll get started, and if we get the PowerPoint working.
I'm back.
Oh, there it is.
But
okay.
I'm back. It did not want me to share my screen, so apologies to everyone.
Let's see. Okay.
We're going to try again.
One more time. Okay.
We're good so far?
Yep. If you want to click to the next slide. Click to it. Okay, great. All right. So we wanted to just start first and foremost by just thanking everybody for joining us here today as we talk about what our plans are within Delaware County to create a Delaware County food bank. As you know, we're going to talk a little bit about food insecurity in Delaware County, if we want to go over to the next slide. Delaware County has seen a significant growth in need in recent years. And we are particularly seeing that in a lot of the parts of the county closest to Philadelphia, where we've seen a pretty rapid rise in poverty over the last 20 years. And obviously, in particularly the last few years, especially the last year, where we've seen an increase in need like we've never seen before. This is happening all throughout our region, but Delaware County in particular, we know that there's been a significant growth in need. And what we're looking to do as an organization is to really develop a plan that looks at the whole county, that looks at where we're seeing those increase in need at, and basically building the infrastructure outward as wherever it's needed. And so that's going to have us do an assessment of the entire county, which we're going to get into in a few minutes, but really looking at where those pockets of growth and need are. While we've had this historic pantry network with DIFAN, we also know that there were limits on growth from within that network. And what we really need to do is to do a holistic view of the entire county and figure out where the areas of greatest need are, and then develop the different interventions in those parts of the county to make sure that everybody in Delaware County who has a need is able to get the food assistance that they need. We go on to the next slide. Just talk a little bit here about Share Food Program for those who don't know. I'm going to put up a slide here just with some numbers about Share Food Program, because a lot of folks don't know the entirety of what Share Food Program does, or the real scope of the work that we do within the region. Our organization kind of does the work behind the scenes a lot of times, but for so many organizations within the Philadelphia area, they rely heavily on the Share Food Program to provide food assistance to them. So right now we're distributing on a monthly basis about 5 million pounds of food in Philadelphia and the collar counties, including Delaware County, where we've been doing a lot of work, particularly in the wake of COVID. So our organization, first of all, for those who don't know, we got started in the mid 80s, first as a food co-op. So our organization actually first got developed as an organization that was looking at food access and trying to figure out how we can get food assistance, get food to areas that were considered a food desert. A lot of you I met in a previous project I did called Fair and Square in the city of Chester. So this is something that I've always been very, very passionate about. Share has always done a lot of work around this idea of access to food through areas that didn't have access to a grocery store. But then in the 90s, we started to see that there was another need out there that wasn't being met, and really developed what you would call more of a traditional food bank. And so we had these dual programs going on at the same time, of the Share Package program, which is working on food access for areas without grocery stores, and then our more traditional food bank, which we have seen significant growth in the last few years, and in particular the last year. In 1991, we began taking over management of the State Food Purchase Program and the TFAP, the State Food Purchase Program and TFAP in Philadelphia County. And then in 2016 rather, began management of Montgomery County's TFAP and State Food Purchase Program. And in addition to that, we've been rapidly growing over the last few years, in particular, our access to donated product. We also run the largest CSFP program, which many of you may know. It's the Senior Box Program. We run the largest CSFP program in the state of Pennsylvania. Right now we do that in Philadelphia, Montgomery, and a little bit in Chester County. That program continues to grow for us. We're one of the only one of only two food banks in the state that were pretty much able to maintain caseload over the course of the pandemic. One of the ways that we were actually able to do that was to do home delivery of those boxes throughout the pandemic to make sure as many of those senior centers were closing and folks weren't able to get access to food, that we were able to keep food flowing to folks. In addition to that, about 2 years ago, Share Food Program was approached by the state of Pennsylvania, by the State Department of Agriculture, to take over management of the National School Lunch Program, the commodity distribution in our region. So through that program, we serve 70 school districts, including all the school districts in Delaware County. It is 794 schools that get their food, their commodity food from the Share Food Program. And so every morning, 6 days a week, we're sending our trucks out, usually about 5:30 in the morning, out to different schools who are getting those meals, getting that product, and then turning that into nutritious meals for our students. And then, of course, the biggest bulk of our work is around this traditional way of you think about a food bank, and that is, again, distributing more than 5 million pounds of food a year through a month through our emergency distribution network. And in particular, in this last year, we've had an opportunity to really reevaluate our entire network. And Steve's going to talk a little bit about this later, but really digging into how we can better develop the distribution network that makes the most sense for our entire region, including, as we mentioned earlier, the significant growth of need that we've seen in the suburbs. Share has long had going back to when the Share Package Program was first created in the 80s, we've long highly valued volunteers as part of our network. And so our organization really works a lot with volunteers, both in packing the packages that we do, and also assisting in a number of other ways that we'll talk about in a few minutes. And then finally, we have a farm on site here at Share Food Program, and growing about 500 pounds per year of food that we then distribute back out into the communities that we serve. Steve, if you want to go on to the next slide. And this is you. Okay, I'll kick it over to Steve.
Great, thanks, George. So the next section is really going to talk about what we're here for today, which is Delaware County, and particularly a little bit more about overall what the county's been looking for in the RFP that they put out, what our strategy is going to be to kind of accomplish a better system to fight food insecurity in the county, and then we'll give like a broad timeline of the plan for Delaware County. And so just to start, based on the conversations we've had with the county so far and through the RFP process, one thing I want to flag is that we're not actually taking over this contract until July. And so we won't be the lead agency for this until July. There's currently another organization that's leading this work, Family and Community Services, who has been leading this work for the past 25 years in Delaware County. And so we're in the process of working with them on a transition. But in the meantime, this is kind of the information that, based on the conversations with the county, that we've kind of pulled out as the biggest things we're going to be working on. So obviously the first thing is a dedicated food bank in Delaware County. So that's going to be the main focus of all this work, is to really have, I know a lot of folks have initially had a little concern that this was going to be Share Food Program coming in from Philadelphia and running a food bank in Delaware County. But the real goal of this is to have a dedicated food bank in Delaware County that leverages the resources that Share Food Program has from our large warehouse in Philadelphia and the donations we're able to get and the volunteers we're able to get. But at the end of the day, we want a dedicated food bank in Delaware County. A big focus is going to be equitable distribution of food among the Delaware County pantries. And so part of what I'm going to talk about as far as the strategy goes is really thinking how we can do distribution in the counties, not necessarily based on who's able to take food, who has the storage capacity, but really thinking about where the food is needed and the people that need the food as the primary focus of where we're getting food out. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next slide. Another aspect of the RFP and our conversations with the county was the development of a job readiness culinary program in the county, which is we're first going to work on the pantry program, and the job readiness program will be something we're working on a little bit later after we hire someone to specifically lead that work. Increased outreach to community members facing food insecurity. And then so I'll talk about this in a moment, but more goals will be outlined in conversations with pantries and stakeholders. One of the things I'm going to talk about in this strategy is engagement with the folks who are really, oh, I'm getting a little echo here. Okay, great. Thank you. Is that we really want to focus on having conversations with folks, and we're not going to jump in and make decisions just based on, you know, the conversation that we might have had with the county, but we really want to have conversations with the players, the people who are out there doing the work, the people who are receiving food. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide, but there are going to be additional needs obviously identified for the county based on those conversations. And so so I just wanted to make sure that was known. So just to talk a little bit more about our strategy in Delaware County, I kind of hit on these in the last slide a little bit, but focus on equity is going to be our #1 priority. And racial equity is going to be at the top of that list. The systems really that have led to the inequities in our whole country, but also in Delaware County, are also extremely present in the system where we're fighting food insecurity. And so we've built out some processes, and it's actually great that we have experience in these other counties, because we've developed some systems to really look at racial equity and equity around poverty. And we're going to implement those systems into Delaware County after we've had conversations to get more information. And as I mentioned before, providing resources where they're most needed. And oftentimes we see both, everywhere I've worked in this, is that we deliver food basically based on where they can take it. So it's a lot of the system relies on us being able to store food, or sites being able to store food. And so we're really going to work on providing resources where they're most needed, whether that is storage, refrigeration, things like that, but making sure that we're doing the work in the communities that need the food. As I mentioned, we're going to use mapping and analysis in the decision-making process. And one of the, another big focus that George will talk about in a moment is opening a warehouse in the communities that we serve. So we want to make sure that our warehouse, our presence in the county, is in a neighborhood that's facing food insecurity, where we can have the biggest impact. Next step is dedicating the required resources. So we're going to be hiring a Delaware County program director. Francis, as you know, my hope was to have that person on this call today, but we're still taking our time with the process to make sure we get the best person. And so we have some final interviews today. And so if everyone could keep their fingers crossed for the next 24 hours that things go well for us, we would really appreciate it. But I feel like we have a good start here. Eventually, we'll also likely be hiring someone to manage the job readiness program, because that's such a big beast itself that we want to make sure that we're putting the proper resources to make sure it's done well. And we'll probably end up having someone to do some driving. And so right now we're in the process of engaging with a strategic planning consultant, Robin Rifkin, who's actually on the call. You can do a little wave or something, Robin, if you want. I'm sure everyone already knows Robin, but Robin's already really familiar with this work, so we're really excited to engage with her on this. And what I talked about with Robin too is that, you know, we're really going to focus on engaging in conversations with people who are at all levels of this work to make sure we do a great job, as we're kind of looking to rework the system a little bit. As I mentioned before, we're in the process of also obtaining a warehouse in Delaware County, which George will talk about in a moment. And then I also mentioned that we're going to be onboarding other staff as needed. Another pillar of the work we're going to be doing is engaging stakeholders in the decision-making process. So we'll be working with Robin to engage and bring all stakeholders to the table. We're going to start actually in the next few weeks, initial surveying of pantry stakeholders and clients, just to kind of get a base level idea of where we're starting. And, you know, one of the quotes that I like to just emphasize in all this work that I'm doing, I come from like an organizing background. And so no decision about us without us. We really want to make sure that we're doing a good job at talking to folks and not just rolling out a plan that we've already made. And then the last thing that we really want to focus on is communicating consistently with partners and stakeholders. We know that the key to any successful team is communication. So as of now, we're sending biweekly updates to the pantry partners in Delaware County. We will obviously make those more frequent as we get closer to July 1st. We have regular calls. There's a call hosted by Gail Odie, and we do regular calls with organizations fighting food insecurity or doing any anti-poverty work in the county to really make sure we're all on the same page about things. And then ensuring a successful transition with Family and Community Services, which we've been in regular contact with them about the transition process. We're going to be doing extremely regular visits to Delaware County pantries. We've already done introductory calls with most of them, and we're actually already distributing Farmers to Families boxes, which are the emergency food distribution program from the federal government, which are the 30-pound boxes that are pre-made of milk, of dairy, meat, milk, and produce. And so we've been doing regular distributions in the county for a while. At Upper Darby, we've been doing it twice a week for quite a bit. And then really a focus on community organizing. This, pantry work is essentially community organizing at the core. And so really making sure that we're emphasizing that in everything we do. So I'm going to pass it to George just to talk a little bit about the Delaware County warehouse.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So this is I think a very exciting part of this for everybody on the call. We are continuing the process of locating a warehouse within Delaware County. The unfortunate part is our original goal was to be able to purchase a warehouse. For those who don't know, that the current real estate market, particularly for warehouse spaces, pretty much any warehouse space that's on the market right now has a giant Amazon smile on it. So it's becoming harder and harder to find adequate warehouse space to purchase. But our goal is by May 1st, assuming that no new properties are on the market or potentially viable for us, we do have 3 different properties that we have our eye on for lease agreements. And so all of those would be in excess of 8,000 square feet, located centrally in Delaware County, as Steve said, also in areas that have higher food insecurity. We are going to be investing in significant and refrigeration and freezer capacity. More and more, as Steve mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot of the farm to families boxes. Share also handles more TFAP commodities than any other food bank in the state. And so a lot of those TFAP commodities are also refrigerated. Lots of fresh fruits and vegetables that we are going to be able to really increase in Delaware County. And to do that, we want to make sure we have plenty of refrigeration and freezer space. This is more and more where the market as a whole is going, is to more refrigerated and freezer product. And for food banks, we're seeing a lot of it as well. And so we definitely want to make sure that there is adequate capacity to be able to take in as much of that food as possible. There's fresh fruits and vegetables, lots of frozen lean meats that we're able to get. And that's a big part of, again, where the advantage is, where we've been handling a lot of this product for years now, and actually have been working with the county for a long time in delivering TFAP entitlement products, and now we're going to be able to really be able to bolster overall that product. And then finally, we want to make sure that we do have enough loading dock space, both to be able to have inbound and outbound happening at the same time. We definitely want to try to be able to have enough capacity to be able to handle multiple trucks all at once. And kick it back over. I think kicking it back over to you, Steve.
Great. And so now I'm just going to run through a rough general timeline, just like kind of at a broad view. Apologies that it's not super cute. My Gantt chart skills just aren't really where I want them to be at this point. But just so just for a general overview, Right now, we're in the process of interviewing and hiring a Delaware County Program Director, which is one of the first steps that we're looking to finish. And as George mentioned, we're also in the process of securing a Delaware County warehouse. We've already started the process of engaging a strategic planning consultant, which I mentioned before. Because we've been waiting, we've pushed back the timeline on hiring already once, just to be fully honest, because we want to be really careful with this position. And so we're actually going to start our site introductory meetings in the next 2 weeks. And so we're going to be using some of our staff from other departments just to get these started, just because we understand that the folks in the county know that this change is going to happen in July. And so I don't want them to have to wait too much more until we hire someone. So I want to start getting these conversations going. Even though we've introduced ourselves and kind of sent some food out there already, I really want to start having conversations so people understand the process. We're also going to start introductory phone surveys with stakeholders starting in May. Just again, we don't really want to wait super long until we've necessarily have someone on as the Delaware County Program Director, but really want to start getting conversations going with people because, as you all know, 2 months, especially in pandemic time, flies right by. We'll be doing data mapping and analysis based on these initial conversations and also based on some of the poverty data starting in mid-May, and then in June we'll start the share pantry onboarding process. And so to be a share partner, we have basically an agreement, and we want to make sure that folks have ample time before the contract actually starts and before we start distributing food to make sure that they know what to expect from us and that we know what to expect from them. And so we'll start that in mid-June and hopefully really finish that pretty quickly because it's an online training and some site visits, and we'll dedicate as much staff as necessary. And then July 1st, we officially begin as the lead agency for Delaware County. And so I'll pass it to George for some next steps. I know that folks probably have questions, and don't worry, we have a whole section for that. So.
And so for us, in addition to all of this, obviously, we are continuing to fundraise on our end to make sure that we can bring the best possible food bank to Delaware County to really build this out in a way that I think everybody in here knows is long overdue for the county, and we want to be able to build this best system. Marin Atkins, our development director, who's also on the call, has been working on a number of potential funding sources for us to be able to really build out the overall network and capital needs that we have within the county. But of course, this is going to be a very important next couple of months for us as we continue to fundraise to make sure that we are able to bring all the resources to the table to really build this out right. And now we can stop for questions.
I'm happy to ask the first one, without anybody else jumping in. You referred to, first of all, this is fabulous. I mean, really well thought out, and I'm so glad you're taking your time to hire the right person. They always say hire slow, fire fast. So I can understand you really want the right person to get this off the ground. You referred to doing outreach to the community. I really like that community organizing approach. And then you referred to doing stakeholder phone surveys. When you're talking about stakeholder phone surveys, you're talking about pantries and other distributors. The outreach you're going to do with the community is separate.
Yeah,
The users, I would say, the users of the services.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I see it at all levels, really. Right. So we have the people who are receiving the food. We have pantries who are distributing the food. We have other stakeholders who do other anti-poverty work and are obviously tied into the system. And so the initial pantry surveys that I mentioned on there is specifically talking to pantries because as of now, there's nowhere that all this info on pantries in Delaware County is held. We have all their contact info, but we don't know, like what their storage capacity is, what kind of you know,
Yes.
what their storage needs are. And so that's what we're really looking to do with the pantry surveys.
Got it. Got it. Are you thinking at all about doing any sort of a user survey the way HealthSpark and did up in Montgomery County a few years ago?
Yeah, we're actually starting the process of doing something like that again in Montgomery County. And so absolutely interested in doing something like that. I'm not 100% familiar with the model they used, but I'm definitely interested and in talking particularly Robin too, who knows a lot about this work and how we can do that in an effective way. Yeah. And
Super.
also obviously open to help from anyone in this group about that, and also anyone who might be interested in being part of the stakeholder interviews. Also want to say that someone already messaged me in the chat that they're excited to help out, so privately. So I'm very excited about that. Shout out.
I have a comment and a question. First off, comment, we at TCF, we have our annual community celebration coming up in about 2 weeks. Just wanted to let all the funders on the call know that we're honoring DIFAN as the Community Organization of the Year. We felt like it was an appropriate time to recognize the last 40 years of collaboration that's been happening between those food pantries. So on the 28th, they're gonna get that award. And I'm hoping it's a good way to build morale. They've all had a tough year.
Yeah.
Out on the front lines. Second thing is a question. So historically, when we want to give grants to the food pantries that are in the churches, we have awarded those grants to family and community services with a restriction to the food pantry. The reason we do that is because we do not make grants directly to churches because there's not as much financial tracking in the 990. Can we continue to do that through share, where we would be able to restrict to Loaves and Fishes food pantry, and you would ensure that those resources get used for food to that specific community?
Good question.
I don't see that as a problem on our end, Mara. I don't know if you want to chime in there, but.
No, I mean, we'd be definitely happy to work with you to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, can I jump in with a question? Yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Kristen.
Great. This is Kristen Romans from the Pew Charitable Trust. I am wondering if you all can give us, at least at a high level, a sense for, you know, what core elements of the work that you're doing in Delaware County are being funded by the county, and then where are there limitations on what you can do that philanthropy would be helpful in kind of filling those gaps?
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. Yeah, so we our goal was to go in with the county as same as we've done with all of the other counties that we work in that our goal is not to take resources away from the county that are needed elsewhere in human services. And so it's the same way as we do in Philadelphia and Montgomery County, where essentially we just ask for a pass-through of the funding, that the administrative funding that comes with these programs. So we don't ask above and beyond that. And we did the same here in Delaware County, where we simply asked for the administrative funding that comes with TFAP, which is, I believe somebody asked earlier, TFAP is the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is big government commodities. And then the State Food Purchase Program, which is a Pennsylvania-based program for the Emergency Food Network to be able to purchase product to give out through the pantry network. And so that administrative funding is all we've requested from the county. All of the above and beyond, the wraparound services and the facilities, job training, things of that nature, those will be elements that we're going to be privately fundraising for, as we have again in Philadelphia, successfully in Philadelphia and Montgomery counties.
Although,
Thanks.
George, you may be able to use some workforce development money for that culinary.
Yes.
I know Kate McGeever
Sure,
wants to do a lot more in the youth space. Good.
Yes, yeah, and so we certainly, especially when there's pass-through federal dollars or anything like that, as we have in other counties, we would intend to apply for pieces like that. What we didn't want to pull from is sort of the general operating funds that Delaware County has. But if there are pass-through funding from the state or federal government that we might be eligible for, we would certainly apply for that.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Paul Johnson. I'm from the Delaware County Interactive Revenue Gaming Authority. I think I got
Yes.
got the name right. I actually live in Prospect Park, where Loaves and Fishes is located, and I know that throughout the county there are food donation drives that go specifically back to those pantries. And I was wondering, would this go to a central location, or would that operation continue? And then I have another question is, are you planning to partner with the colleges within the county as well? Because there is food insecurity among college students. We've worked with Delaware County Community College, and I have to disclose I'm a professor at Montgomery County Community College, so I'm well aware of the food insecurity among college students. So two-part question.
Sure. Steve, I don't know if you want to take that?
Yeah. So for the first question, which was just so I make sure I understand it correctly, are you asking if donations or food drives are made in Delaware County, are they coming back into the county, or are they going back to a central?
Yeah, I meant, are they going back to, should they continue to go back to the specific pantry, or should they go to your warehouse location so it can be centrally collected, or a combination of the two?
I think that that's something that I would like to have conversations about with the pantries, is that, like, what's easier for them and what do they prefer? I know that, depending on the quantity that folks are getting of donated product, some of them can't store it. And so if it's easier for us to store it for them, we're happy to help figure out a way to do that. And if it's easier for them to take it directly, that's fine too. But since I brought the other thing up too, I just want to say that if stuff's donated in Delaware County, it's going to come out in Delaware County too. But we're also not, like, we get general donations too. And so those will also go to Delaware County. You didn't ask that question, but I answered it anyway. And then the other thing about the college partnerships. And so, yeah, we've actually been working a lot with the Hope Center, particularly in the region, talking about food insecurity in general at colleges. And so it's a particularly difficult issue because of access to cooking and things like that, because a lot of dorms don't have access to that. And so we've been working on solutions to that, particularly because a lot of the food that we get from TFAP or from state food, or even from farmers to families, is not ready to eat. And so we're working right now on some other programs that will have meals that are easily reheated. And I think that's something we can help with, but also working with food pantries at universities, because they understand their students and they understand the food insecurity on the campus. And so, yes, the answer, yes.
Yeah, I've done a food donation drive in honor of Martin Luther King for the Day of Service. And we take a portion of it and send it to the community college. And it's things that are relatively that you can put in a microwave in case someone's experiencing hunger while they're on campus, or something that they can take home that they can put on a shelf or eat, rather quickly. So those are good ideas that you mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. I know there was a question in the chat, and I want to make sure it's not ignored. So I can just read it if everyone.
Yeah, that's fine. That was my question. I just wanted to write it down so I wouldn't forget. But I'm interested in the healthful mix of foods, and I know it's challenging with donations and the commodities you receive. But have you had ways of improving the mix of foods in pantries that you support, and what's your plan for Delaware County related to that?
Yeah, I mean, George, feel free to jump in. I could talk for 3 hours straight, so I'm just going to warn everyone on this call that that's the case. And George is laughing because he knows it's true. But so I think one of the things that's really helpful is the way we're looking at procurement in a little bit of a different way right now. And so even coming into Delaware County, we've looked at the procurement system, and they've used basically the same vendor for a significant amount of time. And so by opening up to more vendors to be able to contract with, we're able to be a little bit more picky with the food that we're getting, instead of just taking whatever they might have. And we're also hoping to by getting more vendors in the mix, we're able to be a bit more competitive. And so we're actually able to get cheaper food, which helps us get more food in the long run. And then there are some other programs, like the Farmers to Families has been great to help bring nutritious food in, because it's actually fresh food, unlike a lot of the food that we're dealing with state food and TFAP. And so programs like that have been super helpful in being able to get a healthy mix. And then this is kind of separate, but for the National School Lunch Program, we just brought on a staffer who is going to be the director of that program, and she's a nutritionist and will be helping us, particularly in the school lunch area, get much more nutritious food going out there. And so, and it's actually a huge, we could have a whole meeting about this, but it's a huge opportunity to bring a lot more healthy food to schools. And we're also able to use her expertise in nutrition to kind of push towards all the other programs. So I'm going to stop there just so I don't go on for too long.
Other questions, folks? Is the warehouse where you see the program director working out of?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that's the answer. Yeah. Yeah. We'll have them working out there. Sometimes, obviously, you know, we have a lot more storage in Philly, so we're able to like send stuff out as needed. But yeah, they'll be working from there almost the whole time.
Okay. And regarding volunteers, have you reached out to the Delco Citizen Corps at all? I know they're very, very busy right now with the vaccination sites, but how do you see that volunteer operation working in Delaware County?
Yeah, so we've had very, very, very initial conversations. Since we haven't taken over too much officially yet, I don't want to like grab anything from there yet, but one opportunity I think that's huge for Delaware County, and something George is always talking about, but we're all always talking about, is like the last mile. So we were able during COVID to start a home delivery program. It's just in Philadelphia, but I think a huge volunteer opportunity in the county is to get folks making home deliveries. And the focus we've made on this is seniors and people with disabilities. And while the effects of COVID have been extra hard on those two groups, it's also in general, food insecurity hits them really hard. So I think a great volunteer opportunity to start up would be to have a home delivery system. And I think that'll be one of the first priorities, is to really help focus more on getting food to those people who might not be able to safely go out to pantries or other food distributions. So.
But you'll reach out to Senior Community Services in Surrey and to make sure you're not duplicating what they're doing, but you augment it and help coordinate it all.
Exactly.
That's really the overall goal of everything that we're doing here is looking at the end client, the end customer. And so, you know, while we are managing the food for this network of pantries and ensuring that the pantries are getting as much food as is needed for their clients, that we're also taking a sort of a more global look at hunger throughout Delaware County and what the various different interventions that can be developed that can have an impact, and that may not just be food pantries alone. And so, you know, as Steve mentioned, we've been able to do work around this last mile work. We're one of the only food banks that are really doing that in the country. And then the National School Lunch Program, as Steve also mentioned, is sort of a unique role for us. Shared Food Program is the only nonprofit in the country that actually manages this program for schools. And so it's giving us a unique opportunity to look at school hunger in a different way. And there's an article, and I don't know, Mara, if you could send it out, but a great example is something we did over the summer, over the end of the last school year with the Ridley School District, where they had temporarily laid off some of their bus drivers, and were able to bring them back in to do home delivery of school lunch. And we also brought them farm to families boxes. And so we actually went along with them. We brought boxes to them. And so not only were they delivering school meals to students in the Ridley School District that were eligible, but they were also bringing boxes of food to the entire family. So
wow.
We're definitely looking at different types of interventions like that we can really develop. And again, it gives us lots of opportunities for partnerships outside of that traditional network that has been engaged in hunger relief in the past.
I have a question. With your procurement and distribution, unlike or like Philadelphia, we have a very diverse community, right? And so through our COVID-19 response fund, we learned that there are some communities in Delaware County where the federal food boxes, the farm to family food boxes just didn't have the right ingredients, but the individuals and families that were receiving those donations weren't forthcoming in saying, I have no idea what this is or what to do with it. And we're basically receiving the donations, handing it off to friends and neighbors. Meanwhile, they're still hungry. So how will you address that here in Delaware County? Because there is a really big mix in terms of food needs.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started on the farmers to families boxes. We tried to be very clear that, you know, pork is a huge issue in those boxes for a lot of folks, and they kept sending it. And so as part of our initial surveying with sites, like sites know the people they're serving better than anyone else, right? And so having conversations with the sites and making sure that they're having conversations with the people they serve, to be able to even understand what's culturally competent. But we've been doing a lot of work around that and you know, there are many communities that have difficulty with this. Finding kosher food is very difficult. There are like 10 different identifiers on boxes. And so sometimes it literally takes us searching through pallets out here to find the kosher identifier. Anyway, I think it's really about understanding, making sure that that our pantries and our partner sites are having conversations with the people they're feeding. And so that we're able far enough in advance during the procurement process to order food that makes sense. And so we also have done some other programs with chefs and with nutritionists, and to really we have basically explanations of what certain foods are and how they can be used. And so if we're sending out any foods that might not necessarily be something that someone would normally receive, or something that someone's normally worked with, we have tons of like one-pagers and stuff on how to use certain types of food.
I have a question. This is Danielle from Franklin Federal Credit Union. I'm wondering, so if for financial donations and food donations, would that go to DIFAN until July 1st, and then after that maybe go to share?
After that, I think depending if it was going to DIFAN in general, yeah, it could go to share after that. I think that's something we need to work out still with both DIFAN and the county, and to see what folks want. But so I don't 100% know the answer to that. I mean, I'll be fully honest about that, but okay. I can find out for you.
Yeah, because I think we have a couple food insecurity programs like that we have raised funds for. So we have like money to donate, and then we also are planning in July like a food donation drive as well. So I just want to make sure that those donations go to the right place that will get distributed throughout Delaware County correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the work that we'll be doing is obviously looking at Delaware County as a whole. I'd say if there is a particular pantry that you've supported over the years, by all means, yes. You know, continue to support that pantry. And that's you know, if you have a certain relationship with that pantry that might be in a community that you serve heavily, absolutely continue to help that pantry individually. Yeah. Our work is going to be looking at all of Delaware County and figuring out the best model for the county.
And also, Danielle, the foundation, similar to our setting up the response fund for Delaware County that your boss, Mike Magnavita, chaired the advisory board of, we've set up a food insecurity fund. We've also set up a public health fund. The county council asked us to do that so we could help them raise funds for the startup of the public health department. But we've also set up a food insecurity fund so that folks who aren't really sure where they want their gifts to go, but they want to make a difference in the food space, will have an opportunity to contribute, which funds that would obviously go back out the door for either directly to share or directly to pantries, or to pay for, you know, data collection, evaluation, you know, system strengthening efforts in partnership with Share. So something for you
Okay.
to be aware, Danielle, that there's
Yeah,
that opportunity as well. I don't think there will be any problem with your contributing to help to build the food system in Delaware County. We are
Yes,
all
like
in.
we like to do the countywide, you know, donation kind of stuff. We
Sure.
do like Chester County Food Bank or Phil Abundance. So we did have trouble figuring out what to do in Delaware County. So it's like really great to
Mhm.
hear about this, and I just want to make sure that I can
Yeah.
do the right thing, you know, for Delaware County.
Well, there are several people on this call who absolutely have been talking with us about this, for who care about food insecurity and have been wondering, well, what should I do? And I think Share coming here, the county council, Dr. Taylor really deserves so much credit for leading this effort. And Sandy Garrison is on the call now, our Director of Human Services, who's the contracting entity for Share. And the fact that they've decided to move forward in this pace. What is the phrase that Mayor Kenny quoted Winston Churchill this morning about something about taking advantage, no crisis creating an opportunity. We have an incredible opportunity here to do what other counties have done, like Chester County and Montgomery County, and we need to catch up because our citizenry deserves the level of service and excellence that everybody else in the region deserves.
I'd like to say something also about, Steve had talked about our emphasis with home delivery for seniors and people with disabilities, and George had talked about the school lunch program, and children are a really big focus of what we do. Low-income children, kids who are getting school lunch. This past year has been really, really complicated, to put it mildly. And in addition to the article that we put in the chat about using the school buses to help bring food to families, you know, George and the team work with every school, because everyone, you know, some people were opening on hybrid or flex schedules, some were closed completely. So we offered grab and go lunches if schools offered those. And we are, as people are, you know, schools are intermittently opening, we're really very focused again on the particular needs of every school, and they're all different. And looking ahead, someone had just asked me about summer feeding programs, and we know traditionally that a lot of children who are receiving meals in school, the summer is a really tough time for their family. And so the July 1st start date is actually really, it's fortuitous in a way, because this is when a lot of the food pantries are seeing greater need because kids are home all day. And so certainly our operational, you know, our resources are really pushed, and we try to be very responsive to make sure that every family, every child is within walking distance of some really, you know, nourishing food that we can get out to them. And that will be part also of the interview and assessment process, is looking at it through that lens.
So do you want to talk about timing in terms of when you think you'll be ready to have different level proposals for funders? George or Mara, what are your thoughts about that?
Mara, did you want to jump in there? You want me to?
Sure. I mean, we know that everyone has different, you know, different funding cycles, different, you know, different areas that we're interested in. Because our programs are so multifaceted, there are a lot of areas of, you know, what we're doing that might be the best match for what you're most interested in. So we know this is under the larger rubric of food access and hunger relief. And within that, we respect that people have particular areas that are going to most strongly align with your mission, your funding. So, you know, we would love to have additional one-on-one conversations.
Okay, great. There's a question from Paul in the chat.
Oh, great. I was typing an answer and it wasn't enough for me, but yeah, so we actually partner pretty significantly with the Horticultural Society, and they do it for the whole region. And so we have a lot of seed and planted related partnerships with them, and some other organizations that they partner with. And so we've done some distribution of seed packets and plantings, and we also actually we've just started some more partnerships with some schools in the region to have them come to our farm during the planting season, so that people can learn more about growing plants, growing stuff on their own. And so I think that's something that will be an exciting opportunity to open up to Delaware County when we take this over, this contract.
I had a question. Steve, will you be sharing a rough budget for what this project will cost, you know, to get off the ground and then going forward? So we have some sense of what you'll need.
I mean, I'll let George talk about that. They don't let me talk about money very much because I want too much.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we can share out without question.
Daphne, did that answer your question?
Yeah, sorry, is that?
Well, yeah, as long as they'll, you know, share it out so we have some sense of the magnitude of it and where it might fit in, you know, to funders, ongoing, you know, upcoming distribution budgets, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah, without question. Yeah, we can
Okay.
we can put that together. Yeah.
Any last questions? And then we can let our presenters go, maybe. So, did you want to say anything in closing, George?
I just wanted to thank everybody again. Wanted to thank Dr. Taylor and Delaware County Council for really having the vision of what this could potentially look like, and for all of you and your support around around eliminating food insecurity in Delaware County, both before shares, you know, initiative here, but also just giving us the opportunity today to talk with all of you and really thinking about how we can build out the system that is much needed within the county. We just thank you all for all of your support today.
Okay, thank you all so much. To the share team, we'll let you go, and you'll send your PowerPoint to Mariah, maybe send it directly to Mariah at the Philanthropy Network so she always sends out a follow-up. The Philanthropy Network team always send out a follow-up to all those who've been registered with any follow-up information from the chat. And
Great, yeah, and we put our emails in the chat already if you have any questions, and we'll also make sure they're in the PowerPointer can go out on that too.
Okay, super.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just appreciate it.
So we have a little bit more time. We can either let everybody go early, or Jen, should we give people an opportunity to make any quick announcements, or how do you want to wrap up?
Sure, if anyone has anything that they would like to share with the group or ask of the group while we have everybody right now, this would be a good time.
I'm Robin Rifkin, and as was mentioned before, I will be helping share with this. I actually worked at Share for many years, and I'm a nutritionist and a strategic planning facilitator. So I'm really excited to be able to working on this. And I was just wondering if you all would be amenable to being part of stakeholder groups or a stakeholder group, since you do have an investment in the county and have a lot of experience with Delaware County food insecurity. I think it's really important to have the funders at the table. I've worked a lot with Montgomery County and Philadelphia County. So I would love to be able to tap your wisdom and experience to be able to do that. So I'm hoping that we can work together on this.
I can definitely see some subgroups even in this team. I'm thinking of Danielle from the credit union, and Karen Carlson's here from Aqua or Essential Utilities. I mean, there's some corporate funders who do work with food banks who might have some thoughts about what does and doesn't work. Boeing does some funding, I think, in this space. And then there are other individual donors and other funders, but also that we might have some thoughts about other groups that are in the anti-poverty space that don't normally get the recognition. They're a little more grassrootsy. I don't know if Mishiko Warren, our director of grant making, is on the call, and I'm sure her wheels are spinning like crazy on this call about other groups that Share could be working with. But I've already been very impressed with the outreach that they're already doing.
Terrific. Great. Okay. I'm going to leave. Thank you.
Bye, Robin.
Bye-bye.
What a quiet group. Does everybody want to go leave a half hour early?
I'm seeing some nods.
So I would just say that we were going to have this meeting about a tour of Upper Darby, get to know Upper Darby, because they often get sort of left out in the funding shuffle. And we decided to do this share because it was so timely, but we'd still have that idea on our radar if folks are still interested, and they've got lots of plans on the books. So if anybody would like to help us think about what that agenda might look like before we reach out to the mayor and the city manager, do we do it virtually with, video of the city, or do we wait until the fall and maybe we could even do it in, I wonder if it'd be safe enough for us to rent a bus and drive around Upper Darby. I don't know. I'd love to think we could do that by September, but I'm not sure. So if folks have other ideas for other programs, subjects for our Delco Funders gatherings, we'd love to
Francis,
hear
I
them.
don't think a virtual tour would really do it justice. I think we need to get out there and walk around and meet people and, So maybe if we could wait until the fall, or maybe we'll reach herd immunity in the summertime.
You all have to get vaccinated for that.
I just wanted to introduce myself, or reintroduce myself. My name's Paul Johnson, and I'm the chair of the Delaware County Interactive Gaming Revenue Authority. And Francis is the vice chair, and I'm pleased to be here today and pleased to be invited to participate in this call. And we help to fund nonprofit and other initiatives in the county as a result of gaming revenue, essentially gaming tax. So I just wanted to introduce myself, and it was a pleasure for me to be here today. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll also go ahead and introduce myself. I'm sorry my camera isn't working right now. It was at the beginning of the call, but now it seems to not be connecting. So on behalf of Philanthropy Network, thank you everyone for being part of this meeting. And I know Sherry usually staffs it, and I believe she'll be back next meeting, but I'll follow up with all of the materials we discussed. I'm also, for those of you left on the call, throwing into the chat just my email and a few links just to make sure you're all aware that we do have our COVID-19 Prevention and Response Fund is now live, and we are accepting applications for the first round. It's also a very unique and interesting model for a pooled fund, so I'd definitely take that if you haven't. As well as on April 26th, we have an upcoming event on digital and equity and kind of how funders can think about that and start to approach it. So we have a great panel for that, and this is being put together by Independence Public Media Foundation. So just wanted to throw those all out there. And
that's great.
Yeah, thanks. It was a great meeting. I just feel like I learned so much.
Thanks, Mariah. Anyone else have anything to share, or are you zoomed out already for this morning?
I can think of another topic. Monica or Sandy, I don't know. I don't think they're still on the call. Oh, Sandy's on the call.
I am. I believe Dr. Taylor had another meeting to get to.
We might want to have another meeting down the road on criminal justice reform and reentry, and the prison in Delaware County is being deprivatized, and I know the county's doing a lot of thinking about reentry and housing for people who are reentering the community, and there might be an opportunity for Sandy and maybe Kevin Madden, who's the county council member who's leading that effort, and maybe the DA to even have some conversation with us about that. And
I think that
whether
because I know we have the Reentry Coalition that involves a lot of community members as well as community organizations, and I'm a member of. And I know we just actually, so this week, I want to say it was Wednesday, the district attorney announced the Law Enforcement Treatment Initiative program starting in Upper Darby, which was an effort that his office had undertaken, but also involved Human Services, and we applied for a grant for it because the treatment fees would come through us. And Jack and I have been working a lot on doing, making sure we have adequate mental health services, and basically trying to divert individuals that are coming in contact with police to the appropriate treatment level versus incarcerating them, because far too often, as we all know, that individuals with mental health and substance abuse end up in the prison when they really should be in some type of treatment. So it's really a great partnership I think we're forming, and because we have the services, but they obviously have the contact with the individuals. So just trying to work together and make sure that we're getting the individuals into the treatment. So I know that a lot of efforts are taking place in that regard. And I can't really speak to the prison. I can speak to what we're doing on, as far as the reentry with Human Services and so forth. But I think it's great. I mean, we make a lot of strides, I think.
So I unless anybody had any last comment, I'd suggest we wrap up. Does that work for you, Jen?
Yes, it does. I want to thank everyone for coming in. I think this was a great session, and I know that I'm excited for what Cher's going to be doing.
Yeah, super excited. Helen, were you about to say something?
No, just thank you all. It was a good program. I know I wasn't on screen the whole time, but I was listening.
Okay. All right, everybody have a fabulous, fabulous weekend. Don't hesitate to reach back with any questions or comments. Always welcome your input. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.